In 2019, there was a survey of 1,129 CPA firms in the United States. And we're going to provide the hyperlink to that survey in the description below. And in that survey, it said that women represented only 23% of partners in CPA firms across the nation, and that only 16% of executive committee members for CPA firms with more than 100 CPAs were women. Cherry Blanton, CPA, do you believe that there's a bias against women serving in a partnership role in public accounting?
I believe there's a bias in all things naturally, specifically for a woman serving in a partner role. It's not serving in the role, it's rising through the ranks to get there. I do think women tend to think they can't choose motherhood and a career. They have to choose one or the other. So what I found in my experience in public accounting is they tend to fall out around the manager level and decide to choose to stay home with children as opposed to going into the partner track.
Other than motherhood, what would you suspect are some of the causes or contributors towards this disparity?
I sometimes think that women shoot themselves in the foot because they don't try to be a part maybe of the entire group or process, or engage in the going to lunch or playing golf or doing all the things maybe that their male counterparts might do. And sometimes I think you have the perception that you don't belong there, so you won't put yourself in there, and you really should. You should just always assume you belong, and whatever group that is, go for it and just be yourself.
Because I don't think there's any question that the accounting technical skills are there for anybody that's been in the profession 6 to 8 years. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. And I'm also a co-lead for my firm on the recruiting effort. So what I do see is that women start out, it's about 50-50 coming out of school, going into the public accounting scene, and then they don't stay in it as long as their male counterparts. I also think the profession, the state of the profession is saying now, and so are my college sources, less males are going to college in general, less are going into accounting. So I do think we're going to see an increase in women in those roles rising up in the ranks by virtue of just statistics.
What, other than the likelihood that as men become a smaller part of the college experience, let's assume for purposes of discussion that trend continues, and that women naturally by default will become a much larger part of the public accounting leadership, whether it be an executive committee or be a managing partner of CPA firms. Where do you see the profession going over the next 25 years?
Well, I think it's moving in the direction of women staying in the profession. I'm just thinking about the dynamics of my firm right now. 2/3 of the firm are female. And then I have senior managers that are the breadwinners in their family. And so I see that whole dynamic changing in a microcosm where I am. I do think women tend to value relationships, personal relationships, and put those and make those priority over having a career maybe as a priority. But it's so hard to break it down.
All right, as you talk about that priority, do you think this is a personality and temperament issue, or is this just women are smarter and that lives are more fulfilling when you have less business?
Well, I'm going to draw on my experience because as you age, you gain wisdom, right? So when I was younger and I went in,
Let's hope so.
hopefully, I'm going to assume that. So I entered public accounting at the ripe old age of 29. I did everything backwards. But once I got there, finding my footing on the technical side, you almost tend to not have confidence. You almost have a crisis of confidence, really. So it really takes an advocate in the firm, someone to sit you down and tell you that you have a place at the table, if you'll just go for it, if you'll just try. And I think sometimes when it comes to gender, I don't think women tend to be as aggressive with saying, I'm going to tout my potential, as opposed to putting the work in and then waiting to be recognized for the work. I think that's just, I see that all the time, and I mentor young women in accounting at the firm and at the University of Memphis. And that's my thing is always to be, you've got to let people know what you're doing so you can get the recognition, and I'll just believe in your ability, believe that you belong there, believe that you belong in whatever room it is, whether it's with a room full of men or not.
Yeah, same for lawyers. There's no difference there. So this ASCPA report, 2019 CPA firm gender survey that we talked about, one of the topics they bring up is formal mentoring programs within CPA firms. Do you think that formal mentoring programs can make a difference, as opposed to, and this I'm saying on an individual level, as opposed to the person seeking the mentoring going out and seeking a mentor?
I think for any mentor program to be successful, which I believe I work in a place where our program is successful, that you have to have a natural connection already with the person you're trying to mentor. We try to allow staff to have a choice of their mentors if they already have a natural relationship with them anyway. But we always try to have, it's just one level up. So like a senior will mentor a staff and a manager will mentor a senior. So you're always close to that period of time where you're in that change from one level to another, because some of those responsibilities change, right? So I absolutely, from my experience, when I started in public accounting, there were no female partners in the firm where I was at the time. They were all men, and I didn't even really think about becoming a partner until our local firm was acquired by a national firm. But while I was at that local firm, I can say that the people that influenced me the most and gave me the confidence were three different men that ran the firm and were in leadership roles. And that's who I used as my example. Partly because there really weren't any women to use an example, but partly because I said, well, if I'm going to be in this career, I need to look to the highest level, and that's what I need to try to achieve. So that that's an audit practice leader or whoever it was, at the time. So I was very fortunate that I had advocates who wanted to mentor women and see them rise.
Yeah, I've been the beneficiary of a lot of mentoring. Some of it I didn't ask for, but one of the things I try to tell people as much as I can, I learned the most from a paralegal, and she was brilliant and smart and my age, and she taught me a great deal. I also had a father-in-law that was an appellate judge and was very kind to share his thoughts and the real basics. But at a young age, I realized I didn't know a fraction of what I thought I needed to know, so I always sought it out. Tell me about who you talked a little bit about your first mentoring influencers. Tell us a little bit more about what you learned during that process and what made a difference in your day-to-day profession all the way through to today.
Well, I'm going to steal a line from Susan Stevenson of iBank. She has a great speech she does about mentors and tormentors and how you can learn from both. And sometimes the people that you perceive are tormenting you are actually making you better. And that has been so true. I try not to torment any of my proteges, but if someone is holding you to the highest standard of quality and excellence, you're going to have to strive, and you're either going to sink or swim in some ways. So there are those kind of mentors, which I'm very thankful for. And there are the ones that just gently push you along, and they seem to show up at the right time and tell you the right thing. Like I said, I'm fortunate to have had at least 3 or 4 that I can think of, that all men that all took an interest in my career and all took an interest in different ways in helping me, whether it was technically or going into my business development or social soft skills part of the professional development. I think that's just as important to round out your career, because that's what you're going to have to do to be at the partner level, is learn how to sell your expertise.
Any other specific life lessons in terms of just how to handle yourself in a good old-fashioned, regular, boring business meeting?
Here's the thing I think women have to believe, that they have executive presence. And so that's one of the things I learned in the national firm, is it's very important for you to present yourself, and no matter what room you're in and no matter what the demographic of that room is, own yourself and your abilities, and be confident in that, and use your voice. There's a time to listen, there's a time to talk about things that you know, and don't be afraid to speak up and say what those things are, even if you fear that maybe it's not what people want to hear. Sometimes the whole thing about speaking truth to power is actually what you need to do. You need to be able to stand up and say, I don't think this is right, or I think there's a better way to do it. And sometimes you can take some flack from that. It's all in delivery, I think, sometimes too. It's how you come across. Sincere and authentic always works better than aggressive. It's nothing is rocket science, really. I don't think. The things you can do to better yourself at a personal level, I mean, those are the things you're just going to carry on in your career at a professional level.
Interesting. So walk us through your thought processes in terms of finding your voice. Okay. Specifically, rewind the clock. Now would be a good time to delve into it. So, audit, tax, where are you?
So I was an audit manager in a local firm that merged with a national firm. So the whole dynamic and the culture shifted, and you had to work with that change. And so opportunities were there that probably hadn't been there before, as were new expectations. So I will say that first year in that merger, I learned how to be the most uncomfortable in my career. I said yes to everything. I did things I didn't think I could do. I did things I didn't really want to do, but I'm always glad I did, because every time I pushed myself to do something like go to a networking event alone, or take on a public speaking engagement, or join a board and try to be part of learning how to be in that kind of a setting, all those things honed my executive presence and honed my confidence in myself that I belong there. And let me just back up for a second and tell you, I was a first generation college student. I didn't know what I didn't know. And sometimes it was kind of just blindly navigating my career. Coming into it late, I didn't really understand. In my 20s, I was in industry. So I was lucky enough to have an auditor recruit me to a public accounting firm and say, I think you would be great at this. At the same time, I had bumped into it's a glass ceiling, but I had a female CFO, and she said, I'd love to promote you to be a controller in the company, but you don't have public accounting experience and you're not a CPA, and I can't do it. So I don't know if you call that a professional glass ceiling, So instead of saying, oh, well, I'll just stay here, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go do that. So that was the only way I knew to get to the next step in my career, because at the time I thought I wanted to be a CFO and run a company. I didn't know that public accounting was going to get in my DNA and I couldn't get it out once I got in it. But I'm very thankful for it. It's a great profession.
Well, and you've obviously come very far. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this interview is I've had a chance to watch your career from afar. We were in the same building for a number of years. And I remember when you chaired the Memphis chapter of TSCP, your public speaking was amazing. I need to pay attention, see where Cherry ends up over the career. And you've done amazingly well and have a very high profile within the local CPA universe, which I try to pay attention to as much as I can. Even though I'm a CPA, I don't practice as a CPA, but I enjoy the colleagueship and the comradeship, if you will, of that. I'm the son of a CPA and two of my brothers were CPAs. So I understand the DNA there. All right. So to pivot a little bit on where we've been, when you mentor, let's say a young person in their late 20s, how do you deal with gender? Let's say you're mentoring a woman, and what do you think is most relevant and beneficial for them, other than what we've already talked about? Work on your executive presence. Don't worry about the first 20 meetings you attend. You're there for a reason, mostly to listen, be able to contribute later. You could do it on a side note, or if somebody asks your opinion, give it. How does the role of gender impact what you share?
I tell them not to be intimidated by what they think they don't know, or don't be intimidated about circumstances or environments. Go into it and make the best of it, and you're going to come out and you will have learned a lot. That's really the biggest thing, is don't limit yourself. Don't sabotage yourself just because you don't have the confidence to go do it. At least try to go do something. I had a very great experience with a set of twins who were females in the University of Memphis program, Memphis Institute for Leadership Education, where we mentor students for a year. And the twins were very shy. They came from an environment where all they did was believe you put your head down and you studied, and that was it. And it was all about getting the 4.0, and that's all you had to do. And I asked them, encouraged them for a year to come with me to these professional events like the Tennessee Society of CPAs. And they did. And I just watched them bloom over the whole year to where they were out there doing things, and they were so excited. And sometimes it just takes leading a horse to water, and then they will learn, and they'll see what they can get out of it, even though they either really didn't think it was important or were kind of just timid about doing it. So they're my success story from that perspective. That's
awesome. Yeah, one of my favorite things when I'm coaching young professionals on networking, getting started, they're building their brand, if you will, is if you make one good connection, then the event may be successful. Get on LinkedIn, connect with these people, follow up, and it may be a while before you have a reason to give somebody a phone call. It's just that simple. So do you have any particular books that you recommend for young CPAs to read about business, networking, building a career?
I have one that I would recommend. It's called Brag, the Art of Tooting Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. And it's by Peggy Kloss. It's not a really thick book, but I think it gets back to, you've got to let people know what you're doing and get the recognition for it in a way that's not obnoxious, but at least putting yourself out there, because in our profession, we're selling our expertise, we're selling ourselves, we're providing that service to our client based on what we know. So it's really important that people understand what it is you do every day and how well you do it. And if you've got an expert in a niche practice area, they need to know that's what you're known for, and that you want to be the person they call. And so I would encourage the younger CPA to read that.
Okay, how about just general business books specifically written for women and women temperament?
That's the only book I brought to the table today.
Okay, that's fine.
I've had so many through the U of M program that we would read every year, and you just kind of take little takeaways and you build it up over time. There's no one great book about efficiency, career development, professionalism. I don't have one there.
Okay. Well, I'll throw one out. Alpha Male Syndrome, written by a couple of psychologists out of Texas that work with primarily men, that it's the C-suite level and trying to get people to coordinate and move forward. But I think a lot of business misunderstanding is that the personalities of alpha males aren't static. And then what they do in that book is they talk about 4 different categories of alpha males. And I'm an executor alpha male. I've got a checklist of items I have to get done every day. And if I make it down that checklist, things are going to be okay. If I don't, I won't. You know, I'm angry. I'm upset. I'm a diva. Definitely. I mean, being a trial lawyer was something I had to do because there's no way I could sit in audit meetings anymore. I wanted to argue about the write down of the spare parts inventory at a paper mill. Okay. And I couldn't help myself. It's like, there's not $4 million of spare parts here, more than a man in the moon. Well, as a first year accountant, that's not going to happen. But the point was, I found that I wanted to argue about it. And so sometimes understanding the non-accounting way to do things and to let the alpha in the room bloviate a little bit and give their opinion leads to an opportunity for sanity. And having those experiences in those meetings of watching otherwise successful business owners, entrepreneurs, C-suite executives have their input, even when that input isn't valuable, is something that's terribly important to observe and watch somebody higher up deal with it. And I think that, and then there are, of course, alpha female personalities, and the book addressed that, but as a percentage of the population, you know, women have a tremendous advantage in terms of agreeableness in their personalities, which I think in the public accounting world is terribly important for advancement and leadership. Because you can't go in there and just tell everybody what to do. You can, but it's just not going to work long term for a number of reasons. But so I like alpha males, even to show the negative side of men and the personality reasons behind it. And so some of the most exhausting alpha males I've ever worked with came up with 100 great ideas every day. They're all great, all 100 of them. We can implement one over the next year. Which one are we going to implement? All right. So I think having the ability to study personality and temperament, to be able to identify who you're working with and against and for and near, is a very important skill in public accounting that I was very poor at as a young person. I don't know that I would be any better today. All right. So what would you say when you're mentoring people? What do you tell them are some of the keys to your professional success?
Keys to their professional success is to build the foundation for the technical first. Get that locked down and then work on the client experience and making that client connection and that relationship stronger. It's like you said, when you go in and you want to write down spare parts because it's black and white to you, well, it may not be black and white to the client. So you have to figure out how to take all of these accounting standards sometimes and apply them in a practical manner with your client and their business. The other thing I would say is just that don't say no, say yes. Say yes to whatever opportunities come your way. Someone asks you to serve on a committee in the firm, whether that be a recruiting committee, a training committee, technology committee, because firms want all levels of input. And I would encourage you to join that committee and start being part of the administration of the firm and not just focusing on that client work you have to get done that day, because you've got to round out all your skill sets there. And that's part of it too, is learning how to manage yourself. We call it self-leadership, and then learn how to, manage your environment. And then you've got to learn your project and your time management with your client work. So time management, it's a big thing in our industry, of course. Time is money. We bill our time in theory. I think we bill our intelligence and our expertise. But it does turn into, all the time entry that we do that builds all the WIP and everything. But at a fundamental level for the starter CPA, get in there, get your CPA knocked out. I do see more and more students that want to kind of wait or delay getting their CPA. They want to work in public accounting, but for some reason they just don't want to tackle that big exam. So obviously it's very important, because if we want to promote you to a manager position, you have to have that certification. So that's probably the number one thing, is keep your GPA strong, plan on knocking out that CPA exam, which all seems very fundamental. It's basic to us. Sometimes the students aren't quite as sophisticated in their thinking yet on how important that is for their long-term career goals.
In regards to career development and networking, I'm going to disagree with you on something, because I want your opinion on it. I hate the idea, the Miles Mason that you see in front of you is much different than the Miles Mason at 22, working at Deloitte. And one of the things that, if I could go back and do a little bit differently, would be to be better at the networking and the community service at an earlier age. Okay, now I joined boards as soon as I got my law license and did fundraising. And I had done fundraising in high school as well, but I felt like I had to get my ducks in a row. I had to grow up. I had to have some sort of gravitas. In hindsight, I think that was a big waste of time. And so how do you share with that young person who may have, while they're working on the CPA exam, need to go out and raise money for, let's say they're a dog lover. Well, how many dog charities do we have in Memphis? From the Humane Society to all the other, we got a lot. and they all need fun. They all have fundraising. They all have fundraisers. They got tickets to sell. They got volunteer opportunities for all that. I'm not talking about necessarily joining a board, but get involved in something that you're passionate about, community service, and start learning how that universe works. I hate the idea of people waiting to get their ducks in a row to get that moving in their life. What do you tell young people, and what's your opinion on that? Just get going.
Every firm that I've worked in has some kind of level of community service they want you to do. We want people to be out in the community. So first thing you can do is take advantage of whatever those are, because the firm is going to feed you ways to go out and do that.
Mm-hmm.
But you want it to line up with your own personal interest. I get that. Our firm offers day of service, choosing, go off and, for a day, work with that. I can remember when I wanted to be involved as a treasurer with the Susan G. Komen, because my mother had breast cancer, and I had to go to the partner and say, I really need to be off a whole week to take care of the race and everything that happens that week. Will you let me? And they said, absolutely, we'll let you go do that. And it was my singular passion to do that. But then it turned into a firm passion. If you can bring that personal connection, then the firm will rally around you. And that's kind of what happened. And then from then on, of course, we did Susan G. Komen every year. There are just so many ways to work in a social and a community fulfillment into your work life like that. I think we're really lucky these days that all the firms have that. They want to do that. It's part of what we do. We want to get back to the community. Also, I'm very fortunate to work at a firm where we have a large nonprofit segment. So we have plenty of nonprofits that any of our folks want to be involved in. It's a win-win for the client and for us to marry those two things together.
Yeah, perfect. When did you put the goal in your mind to be a partner level in public accounting?
I didn't even think about it. It was not a goal, even when I was a manager. When our firm merged into the national firm, and you had all these new people showing up and coming in town, and they were saying, what are you interested in doing? Where do you see yourself? And then I realized, a regional manager came in, or partner, and he said, does Cherry have aspirations to be a partner? And my managers told him no. And I said, why would you tell him that? And he said, because you've never told me that's what you wanted. So I learned a valuable lesson there. You have to tell people what you want or what you think you deserve in your career. And I was fortunate and also worked really hard to be a partner in that firm, in the national firm. But it does speak to somebody coming to you and saying, what is it you want to do with your career? You appear to have all the skill set now. Where are you on that? So that's the thing about women. Don't be afraid to say, I want this, as opposed to waiting on someone to recognize what you're doing and handing it to you. I learned that lesson as well.
That's a great point. So if you would share with our audience what some of the more important and less important services and organizations and efforts you've done within the CPA world.
As a younger CPA, I started out with the Tennessee Society of CPAs, got on that board, eventually worked my way up to being the president of the chapter. It was a lot of hard work, very rewarding, very outside of my comfort zone. What you find out is once you start expanding your comfort zone, you can do more things. So then I also went over into the firm asked me to be the liaison for another professional organization that we use called Financial Executives International. I started out as a board treasurer there, only woman on the board, and then became the president of FEI. And those things, you do things for different reasons. I think I needed that professional development aspect from the Tennessee Society because I needed to be immersed in the profession and understand more about my profession. And I got that by going to the meetings and seeing the inside of how everything works. And then when I was thinking about the partner level, I knew I needed to build my network even more. So the financial executives offered me access to CFOs all over town because that's the membership, was the C-suite. So the unique thing about public accounting is it gives you that platform to make all these connections, either through the clients that you're working on every day or all of the events that are out there to go and meet people. And I was also fortunate to have partners who would take me with them and take me to those events and introduce me. And that's another key part of it as well. You have to establish those mentor relationships because people will help you. If you have an interest in something, they will help you.
Yeah, all right, let's talk to the 26-year-old CPA that just passed the exam. You go into a random, boring cocktail event. Do you tell him or her how easy it is to ask somebody else to introduce you to somebody in particular?
Well, I think it's a natural part of a partner developing their staff. There's also the part where you build a relationship with a client and they can introduce you to other people as well. It's a lot easier than you think. I mean, you just have to befriend people and be open to taking them to lunch or going to some event where I always tried to sit at a table by myself because I knew someone would join me. And if I saw an empty table, I went for it. And soon I was surrounded. So it's an interesting thing about humans. They will come to you if you just show up. I don't know, maybe you just have to put yourself in the position of going into an event, even if you're by yourself, and start trying to make conversations with people you don't know. And it does take a little bit of practice. But
yeah, one of my favorite influences was I was a young, I'd married into a political family. And I would be at the political fundraisers for a party or a candidate. And one of the people there regularly was now Congressman David Kustoff. And David was in his 20s, and he was a third-year law student when I was a first year, because I'd been an accountant for a few years, even though I'm a little bit older than him. He would stand in the back of the room, and as people went to the bathroom, he'd chat them up, shake their head on the way, not the way back, but, and would just network his butt off, just standing in the back of the room by himself until somebody came by, and they'd always say hello to him, But even then, he was just a young lawyer, didn't know anything. He would become at age 25-ish, the youngest chair of the Shelby County Republican Party, frankly, because he introduced himself to people. And I just always think it's unfortunate that people think it's such a hard thing to say, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so? And I think it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing when you learn that most people will help you. And if they won't, well, no big deal. Just move on. All right. So let's talk about your life outside the public accounting world. So one of the things that as a young person, I thought it was really difficult to do, and that's become a member of a board of directors. So what organizations have you served with, and what are some of your favorite thoughts about community service in the business community as well as the not-for-profit world?
I was fortunate to have someone recruit me to be part of the University of Memphis MILE program, Memphis Institute for Leadership Education, the mentoring program for the year. Not only did it give me a chance to recruit students for the firm, it gave me a chance to be with other business professionals, and I gained friends out of that. I gained clients out of that. and I can't, the impact of just being out and being in different settings and being around different people, especially probably on a college campus, is even better because you get all of these speakers and you're getting more out of it than you ever put in. That was the thing about Mile. I would tell people I get so much more out of it than probably the students even do, between the experience and getting to mentor them and getting to tell them about all the things about public accounting that are so great, as well as listening to all the speakers that come in and doing all the exercises that we do. So the Mile program also asked me to be on their advisory board. So I serve on their advisory board for the program. I've been doing that since 2011. So I could help give input and to, what would make the program better. But just being a part of the group and being with other executives and other professionals and hearing what they had to say, you develop from that, just being in that environment. That's probably been my greatest, outside of my Tennessee Society of CPAs and the financial executives group that I'm in, that I devote my time to, where the reason I do that is because I was a first generation college student. I had nobody to help me navigate school or career. I kind of had to figure it out on my own from a small town. I think the biggest testament to my success was being able to come to Memphis, not having gone to school here, and then build the network that I have, primarily through public accounting, because of all the client contacts and all the opportunities to do the group, the boards and everything that I've done. There's such a need. There are so many boards that want accountants. Every nonprofit in town wants an accountant on their board, I assure you. And even if it's a younger accountant, that's fine. So I get calls all the time about that. There's all the opportunity to do the ones where it might line up with you loving dogs, like you said. Go be on the board of that society. So my greatest fulfillment has come out of that Mile program, I would say, because I've seen so many young girls go through it, and now they still call me for career advice. They may be out in industry now, or they may still be in public accounting. And now that I have all these contacts, I can also help them find other careers or other jobs in other places if they want to make a move. So I do that as well.
That's fantastic. What about outside of the universe of board of directors, just general community service and not-for-profit fundraising? If you could give us a couple of examples. I know you've done a ton. And, what I love about not being on a board of directors is you don't have to show up to regular meetings. I try to avoid regular meetings for obvious reasons. But about how much fun it can be and the connections that you make just going to a random fundraiser.
Absolutely. I got involved with juvenile diabetes because one of my clients at the time had a child who had juvenile diabetes, and he was heavily involved in it. And he talked to me about it, and I was like, that seems like a really good thing to do. So I kind of wound up getting involved and also strengthen the relationship with the client, because then we were out doing those things together, fundraising or going to the event itself or running the 5K and just putting that together. Being a cheerleader for the event at your firm, those are all fun things to do. I mean, it's team building, and you're not, like you said, it's not just going and serving on a board. You're actually out doing things at this, whatever the event is, whether that be a 5K and you're counting the money or whatever, or giving away the t-shirts. It's another great way. I just happen to have done it with my client, which turned out to be, a long-term relationship. And that's the other great thing about public accounting, is you build all of these personal long-term relationships, because you help people along with professionally, and then also you can do things like that personally.
And just as a follow-up, one of the professionals who has always been so very gracious to me was Bill Watkins. And he did some work for some of my cases and helped me out and directed me away from big piles of poo and help me. Don't do that. And I've just always been a big fan of Bill, and yeah, that's what I would definitely say is one of my favorite parts of that. What about when you think social networking? All right, in terms of you've got a lot of connections, a lot of people that you've run into. What are some of the tools and tips about building your network, staying in contact with them? What do you try to do on a personal level to advance that and keep those relationships and be in front of people?
You do have to be intentional about it. Sometimes it's natural because you might be doing joint things together, but a lot of times it really is me inviting them out to different things that I'm doing with these professional organizations that I think they might have an interest in doing. And a lot of it is just, I never have anybody turn me down for lunch. So I'll just catch up, take them to lunch, see how things are going. You just never know when you're breaking bread. It's such a different experience than if you're sitting in an office trying to have this big formal meeting. But you can stay in touch through LinkedIn. I'm more of a personal face-to-face. Let me blend my social activity and let me pull in a client maybe that might want to. I know they love the Botanic Garden, festivals and those kind of things. So I try to do all that. I will say I picked up golf intentionally to try to sell business to the C-suite. I thought, okay, if all the guys are out on the golf course playing golf, that's what I should just go do. So I just took lessons and then I played in some tournaments, and there is nobody that's going to turn you down to go play golf. And so not everybody plays golf, but a lot of guys do. So that's always fun. And I always let them win, even though I'm okay at golf. But those little things, you can work anything into your life. That is a big part of my social, and I enjoy it. It's not work to me at all. That's what makes my career fun, is all these relationships I built.
I agree 100% with lawyers. You got the whole big personality problem. But what I've found is the lawyers I'm close with, we're much more likely to tell stories of trials we lost than trials we've won, because they're more fun. But that's a different topic. All right. Do you remember your first speaking engagement?
I think that the one that probably would be my first time as the Tennessee Society president, when I had like 130 people coming to that luncheon, that was nerve-wracking, but I've made it through. And then also the firm wanted us to go out and actually do continuing education and be speakers for that. So then you become an instructor for 30 or 40 minutes and talk about what an expert you are in something. So did those.
So I may have actually been there for your first presentation. I haven't been as good at attending Memphis chapter since COVID. I need to get back to it. But talk us through a little bit of your preparation for that time you were at the dais up there, introduced as chapter president, Cherry Blanton. Talk us through the nerves, and what you were trying to do mechanically to breathe and speak for the person who hasn't had that opportunity yet.
Well, again, it is about stretching and being out of your comfort zone, which clearly I was, but the way to mitigate the nervousness is to be prepared. So I just scripted everything that I thought I was going to need to say. So I had a script up there that I tried to go by. And I just you just had to keep doing it. You just had to show up and do it till you got better at it. And I had a lot of support. So from the firm and from my colleagues, and a lot of cheerleaders going on behind the scenes. So I enjoyed it after a while. I got used to it. It took a little time to get over being intimidated with 130 pairs of eyes staring at you. But if you give me a microphone, sometimes I do better with a mic, holding a mic in my hand. I don't know why that is. I feel like I'm an MC or something.
Well, attention is a drug. And all of us trial lawyers are drug addicts.
Well,
So
most accountants are risk averse.
yeah. And that's one of the ways I knew accounting was not going to be my long-term home. So because I loved it. I loved the adrenaline. I still do. I love that feeling like I'm about to throw up before, I still get nervous before trials. And what helped me with the nerves was learning that all experienced trial lawyers who are worth their salt are still nervous when they start opening statements. Okay? And it doesn't matter how many years you've done it. It's still, if it's not nerve-wracking, you need to really check yourself. There's something wrong. So I think that's a great story, and I'm glad I was there, because to me, you look like the ultimate polished presenter. And you were, and I were, that was a few years back, but very young, and I was totally impressed for what that's worth. And I've always had that note. And of course, I'd see you at Clark Tower back in the day, time to time. All right, switching gears a little bit. All right, let's talk partner compensation. All right, big issue that not a lot of people talk about, but I think is a fascinating, whether you're a CPA firm, a law firm, dentistry practice, there's always a tension between production and origination. Okay. And one of my goals for my internet life, so to speak, on that is to try to learn more about it, share that this is an important topic for all people in business. Who should get paid more? The person who's doing the work and the heavy lifting, or the person who brings in the client? What are your thoughts about the relative fairness and or myths associated with production versus origination in CPA firms?
I've been in two different firms that treat it a little differently. One firm would would allocate so much credit to each one, the person that brought it in and the person that was going to do the work, and maybe you shared it 50-50. I'm in a firm where you get full credit for bringing it in, and it doesn't go to anybody else in the team as far as that specific credit. So I think whatever works for the culture in the firm, I don't feel the tension as much now as I did in my old firm, where you had to share it, because then it was, well, how do you break that down? What percentage does someone get of whatever comes in? And everybody's got their goals that they have to meet. It's not easy bringing in new clients. It's actually very hard, because it's hard to get people to change from what they know to try something different. They have to be in a lot of pain. There has to be a pain point that they're trying to resolve, and you have to swoop in and assure them that, go on my word, come over here, and we're gonna treat you right and do you well. Now, with a firm now that's been around for 50 years, I do have a reputation I can rely on. So that's great. But it's also about it's your own personal recommendation. It's your own authentic self. And do they feel that sincerity coming from you? You never want to be a salesman. You just want to be the person that is going to offer to help them in a time of need. And they just need to know what it is you do so they can decide to choose you for their work. All that to say, it's a long cycle. And so by the time you do bring a new client into the firm, I think the person that originated it should probably get most of that credit. In a firm, though, you have to have people that can actually do the work, because the last time I checked, 40% of new business comes from client referral source. Your clients, they're your best source, right, of a referral. So you have to be able to treat the clients right. Now, I'm used to what I say, eat what you kill. So, I bring it in, I have to service that client. I'm doing the whole cycle of it. I'm not normally passing it off to someone else unless it's in an area that I just don't have an expertise in. All that to say about compensation, each firm has to develop its own based on the culture. And most of us have a compensation board that decides that. And then, it's not necessarily transparent to all partners, right? You have the compensation group that decides everything. You have to have both. You have to have the rainmaker, and you have to have the technician that can actually get the work done and deliver a high quality product. And you have to reward both. I know that's a very diplomatic answer. I have loved transitioning from being the production to trying to be in the sales side of things. That's really what I have enjoyed. I've enjoyed making the relationships and working with people on the production side, but it's just fun to go out and meet new people and learn about new businesses and have another relationship in your life that you come in and they're rewarded and you're rewarded.
All right. So you can go in a time machine and go see Cherry Blanton in when you're 29 and you're just starting. And you got 30 seconds to tell her you're going to be able to bring in business. Don't worry about it. Or let's say 60 seconds. How do you convince yourself and that woman that walked in the door into public accounting for the first day after being in industry that you're going to be successful and be able to attract business?
I would tell her that you have no idea how big your career can be if you will just run to it and immerse yourself in it and engage and look at it as a career and not a job. I think when you come from a blue-collar family, you don't understand how significant having a career can be and what that means and how much you can devote your life to it and get fulfillment out of it. So I would say you've got to go for it. I always intended to go back to industry. The original intent was to go get my CPA and some public accounting and then roll back into industry as a CFO. I did try that a few years ago. I lasted about 9 months because I missed public accounting and I missed the clients and I missed everything that comes with it. So
I get it. Now, we've been on some pretty big picture. Let's go down to the micro level. On a day-to-day basis or a week by week, what percentage of your time is being an accountant and what percentage is being a business person, being able to put yourself in a position to market for accounting services for new clients?
Well, as part of the marketing committee that I am on with Trey Watkins, Trey has been a rainmaker for the firm, no doubt. I could say a third of my time is marketing every day, a third of my time is recruiting every day, and a third is actual client service. That's really how my day shapes up. And I always work in my marketing and my business development with either breakfast, lunch, or dinner with somebody, going to a Grizz game with somebody, something that's external and out, where they're out of the office, you're out of the office, and you get a chance to just learn about that person, not necessarily just be all business.
Yeah, I mean, being able to go back, I don't know what used to be the Lexus Lounge, at the Grizz games. It's just a great place to go work, go shake hands. Hey, just great.
Yeah, especially when I love basketball. You love basketball and you get to watch the game, and you get to, one of the great things about public accounting is that you build your referral sources, like attorneys and bankers and wealth advisors. And so there's always something going on where they want to invite you to something, or want you to bring a client or a prospect, and you can go do that. So it's real easy to make that social.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I lean a little bit more to the musical. So we've spent a lot of time over at Orpheum. I'm on the board there. So I don't get to the Grizz as much as I would like, but when I do, it's always a bonanza. But my thought is, as a young person, I didn't understand that the repetitions that, just when I first go to that environment, I don't know anybody. As a young person, it took 30 years of being a lawyer in Memphis to know people to go by, hey, how's it going? How's the kid? How's that thing? So, what do you tell for the young people about getting into that rhythm? You talk about putting yourself out there. And when you walk into FedEx Forum, that you now know you're going to say hello to, you're going to ride an elevator, you're going to say hello to 5 people on the way to your seat, and then another 20 during the game. How do you explain that to a young person on how easy that is going to be in the future?
Well, I think when you're in the world we live in, where let's just say you're already making 40 client contacts at work every day, out to all these different businesses and worked with them throughout the year. And then you put on top of that, maybe joining the TSCPA or whatever else you're interested in or doing. And also, I will just say that even though I moved to Memphis thinking it was the big city, Memphis is just a big, small town. And I run into people that I know everywhere, all over town. And so I just encourage the young CPA to say yes to whatever they get invited to go do, whether that's with a colleague, an alum, somebody that they know. All these events are opportunities for you to meet different people and talk about what you do in a very low-key way.
All right. Negative side. Good Old Boys Network. What's your experience with the business networking in the Memphis community specifically? And have you found that there's any myths, things that as you became more part of the business fabric in Memphis that you thought may have been true, but you learned are not true, and vice versa?
There is a network, if you want to call it a Good Old Boys network. I've always the person that says, I want to be in that group. I'm going to figure out a way to get in that group and not try to beat them, but join them, kind of thing. So, but I never really felt like I was excluded. I just kind of was invited to go or asked to go. And whether that's your own little work environment inside your office with your fellow male counterparts, or whether that's going to a client office and including whoever that is and taking out a client to lunch or whatever, you just have to include yourself and invite yourself in some ways. I think that's what I did. Invited myself in, and I don't ever felt like I was turned away or I wasn't where I was supposed to be. I know some people think there is a good old boy network. Maybe there is, and maybe you just have to learn how to take advantage of it.
Yeah, what I'd share with young people is that there is a club, but you give yourself the membership card. And that's a choice. You have to choose to want to be with the cool kids who are making stuff happen, starting businesses, building careers, whatever that may be. And yeah, there's plenty of women lawyers who have a much bigger network than me. That's for sure. And I don't see a good old boy network anymore, more than Man in the Moon, especially since all the judges are now women, for whatever reason. Not all of them, but majority, especially the ones that I've heard. So I think it's a great opportunity, like you said, turn that frown upside down and go compete. What important marketing skills, other than what we've talked about already, do you think that you had to learn that has been very beneficial?
What I'll call them intentional touch points. If I read an article and it made me think of a client or a prospect or something they might need, I sent them that article. I said, hey, I was thinking about you. It's giving someone attention. It's focus and attention, even if it's fairly consistent. It has to be something that you do. You can't just drop it and 6 months later pick it up. You have to do it kind of all the time. It has to become ingrained in your everyday. But it's also an authentic thing. It's not, it's really, you're coming at it from, I want to serve somebody. I want to help somebody. I see this might help them. So I'm going to send it their way. And then they know I'm thinking about them. And that really carries more weight than you realize. And it doesn't take much. And it doesn't take much to ask somebody to come to a table that the firm is sponsoring, to an event that they, like the Women's Foundation, and they're like, oh, this is great. I've always wanted to go. Or, you never know how you're going to touch somebody on a personal level. One of the things I can recall doing is one of my clients had a new baby, and I sent him a little grizzly onesie or t-shirt. I sent him a t-shirt. And I will say, for like years later, he was like, my kid loves this t-shirt. That's his favorite t-shirt. And so it's just little things like that and I don't do it for every client, but you go, oh, that might be nice to do for somebody. It's just, and I think in the South, we tend to be that way anyway. We tend to think about people and try to do for others.
Yeah, that's a great tip. All right. What do you enjoy the most about your career? And I know you've already talked about the relationships with clients.
Yeah.
People you meet along the journey.
It is. It's a long-term relationships with the clients that at some point they almost feel like your family. And knowing that I have certain CFOs, and they're like, we need to play golf like right now. Let's go play golf. Or I really miss playing golf with you. Let's go do that. Okay. I mean, it's just, it is, you're building a social network and you kind of don't even realize it. And it's got so many benefits around it that are unintentional, but you never know the fruits of your labor. You will recognize over time from the relationships. I have a relationship where I used to supervise someone in the firm. She was a senior. She's now a director of finance for a company. And of course, she calls me up and says, I've stayed in touch with her for 10 or 15 years. She calls me up and says, hey, I need someone to audit this company. Will you do that? Will you propose? And of course, I mean, that's just how it works. You never know when somebody's going to need you.
That's great. All right. It's Tuesday morning, and there's something on your calendar you do not want to do. And you're getting up, you got your coffee. What is that thing you do not want to do? The thing you like least about your career?
Entering my time. Every public accountant is going to tell you that. We put it off to the last minute, and you have to enter your time in 6-minute increments.
Oh, yeah.
You know
Lawyers don't know anything about that. Oh,
Yeah, you know anything.
yeah,
That's kind of a lame answer, but that really is.
that is lame.
It's
Yeah, because you got the recruiting. Um, that sounds awful.
that's fun.
Talking to college students about accounting, that sounds awful.
No, it's
Uh,
fun.
yeah, well, it involves going out in public. Everything that I do that is going out in public sounds awful. What about, is there another committee within the firm other than recruiting and marketing that you have to attend that you just hate?
Well, I don't hate anything.
No, I mean, really hate. I mean, I'm not talking about little, just dislike. I mean, hate.
No, I can't think of anything. I sincerely, I
So
really
you're
can't.
telling me in your current level at Watkins Ubraw, you look forward to every meeting.
I don't dread any meetings. I really don't. I'm always going to find out something I didn't know.
Yeah, well, that's because you're an optimist and well liked and probably extroverted. Some of us that are introverts, there are meetings I just dread and court appearances that drive me crazy. And I can't. So I was just trying to draw that out of you, something fun there.
You know, if you got to deliver a bad message to a client about something, that's the toughest one, is to either say your fee's going up really high or say we can't do what it is you want us to do because of this reason, or you're doing this really wrong and it's going to cost you a lot of money. Those are the worst. Those are the worst meetings.
There you go. They
are.
Yeah. And I forgot the woman's name. I put her story in my book. I was at a AICPA national convention, and her first name was Sharon because I'm married to a Sharon. And she had to go tell Ken Lay at Enron that the accounting wasn't working, and Arthur Anderson was doing it wrong. And evidently Ken looked at her and said, we don't pay them $1 million a month to get it wrong. But they were taking 100% of the revenue of these leases and just slamming them into income immediately. And she's like, I have no idea. I worked there. I worked with those people. But I don't know how we do that. And so she had, got shown the door. But it's a great story. It's a great story. Exactly. How do you tell your client, even when you're in industry and your client's the company? No, no, we can't do that. It's fascinating. And as lawyers, we get asked, can we file a motion with the court? Yeah, we can, but I'm not going to do it. Well, why? It's a waste of time. There's no strategic advantage to going into court and losing. Now, the fun thing about litigation is that sometimes you can have an important strategic objective, whether you win or lose any particular motion. And sometimes you just got to keep the thing moving and get some momentum going so that you can get a resolution. But yeah, so telling clients no, not a favorite, I guess.
Disappointing in them. It's disappointing a client or having to tell them that they've made an error that's significant, that you found something and there's nothing you can do to make it better.
Yeah.
It is what it is, and we're going to have to either book it and live with it.
Well, that's a great answer. I like that. Because for the tax people, you got a tax liability that they weren't expecting. They're going to have to go visit the banker.
The tax folks, they do get all the glory when they have this fantastic tax savings, but then again, they do have some painful conversations when it's a big bill that's got to be paid. Yes.
Yeah, I learned those stories quite a bit with growing up. My dad was a tax CPA here locally and for 35 years. So I'm quite familiar with that. All right. on a positive note, what are you most proud of in terms of a professional accomplishment?
I'm most proud of having been a partner in a national firm, and because it's something I never thought I would do or be. Greatest accomplishment.
I mean, that's a great accomplishment. I didn't get out of first year being an audit.
Yeah, that, and the second thing I'm probably most proud of is passing the baton to my nieces and nephews to get a college education, since I was a first generation college student, and I hope I set a good example for them. Because I have one that's out of U of M and one that's still at U of M, but yeah, that's the proudest thing.
That's great. If you could share a meal with any three individuals, live or dead, who would they be?
My mother, who is no longer with us, Madonna, because she's my favorite singer.
Fun.
Uh-huh.
Madonna now or Madonna from the 80s?
Oh, it has to be Madonna now. All the secrets.
Interesting.
It's hard to think of a third. I can't think of a third. Isn't that sad? I really would be just my mom. That would be would settle for all three. Just my mom.
Yeah, because you'd have to give up conversation time with Madonna.
Right.
That would I'm not sure how that conversation would go, but I would imagine it would be one-sided. Could be wrong about that.
Well, I lost my mom when I was 29, so I feel like I missed out on some time with her. So I'd love to catch up with her.
No, I got you. I get the same thing going on there. So since you totally whiffed on the number 3 person, I'm going to have to ask you one more follow-up question. If you had a choice between sitting in a music session with Paul McCartney today, so Paul McCartney's going into the music studio and you get to sit in for all day, but you can't interact with him, or you get 20 minutes to have coffee with Taylor Swift, but you get to chat her up for 20 minutes. Who do you choose?
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I think you got to go with that. Although Paul is, yeah, he was on the Super Bowl the other day. I don't know if he was hawking something, but Fox threw him up there. And but that's the one that I try to destroy my youngest daughter with, because she's such a Taylor Swift fan and Paul McCartney and Beatles fan that there's no winning that argument one way or the other. All right. So last question. Favorite sports teams besides the Grizzlies?
Memphis Grizzlies are number one. Number one. Grizzlies all the way.
Very cool.
Tigers are second, and it's all about basketball.
Good to know. Well,
Yeah.
Cherry, you've been an absolute dream. Thank you for doing this with us. Hopefully some of the viewers will gain some insight and inspiration about saying yes along the way. And thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I can't say enough about what a wonderful profession I've enjoyed. Public accounting is everything, and I hope the younger CPAs go for it out there.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay.